Okay, so hello and welcome, dear guests. I'm BATUHAN, one of the moderators, and this is the 15th online session of Democracy University ELT Student Club. Before we begin, let me inform you, please turn off your microphones and do not interrupt the speaker during your speech. Thank you. So today's topic is about the role of emotions in foreign language learning by our precious guest, Professor Dr. JULİDE İNÖZÜ. She is joining us from ÇUKUROVA University.
Hi everyone, I am BEGÜM ATSAN, student of the BLT department at İZMIR Democracy University. And now I will give you some brief information about our session. The moderator is Dr. NURDAN KAVAKLI, who is also our academic advisor at ELT department. This session is about 20-25 minutes long, and the QA sessions will be held by QA managers, me and my friend BATUHAN. You may prefer to shoot your questions in chat box, or you may use your mics if eligible. Also, at the end of our session, we will take a family picture. We will inform you when it's time to turn your cameras on. Now, we would like to kindly invite Dr. NURDAN KAVAKLI to start off the 15th session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my dear students, dear BATUHAN and BEGÜM, who are going to be today's Q&A managers. Today, we are going to host our 15th online session, online e-talk series, So our precious guest will be from the English Language Department of ÇUKUROVA University, dear Professor Dr. JULİDE İNÖZÜ. And we know that the affective variables are so much important in foreign language learning, teaching and learning process, And let's see how the role of affective variables with special concern upon the emotions will affect us on the way to teach or learn English as a foreign language. So please welcome our precious guest, dear Professor Dr. JULİDE İNÖZÜ from ÇUKUROVA University. Thank you.
Thank you. So shall I begin with my talk? Are you all set?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You can start.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this webinar. I'm so happy to be able to talk about emotions to students, which I believe very important in language learning process. First of all, let me check if you are able to view my screen or not. Are you able to see my slide? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Great. All right. Okay. So, as you all know, I'll be talking about the role of emotions in foreign language learning. And I would like to start with a review of research on emotions in our field. Although it is a very new area, now I can say that there is a very well-established literature available on the role of emotions. So it's not only in our mind, in our heart, it is scientifically now approved that emotions are really important in language learning process. Then I will be talking about the mutual relation between emotions and linguistic self-concept. And before that, of course, I'll be talking about what linguistic self-concept is. And then, in order to illustrate what I am talking in this presentation, I will refer to one of my recent studies. I will not talk about the details of the study, just I will refer to the findings in order to show the evidence of the arguments in literature. Okay, so I would like to start with a very important shift in our field, which is called as the era of social turn. The end of 20th century witnessed a very important shift, which is called as social turn in language learning. And this changed a lot in our teaching, in our understanding of language learning, and in our understanding of language learning. So this shift is actually very well summarized by Coleman as a shift in perspective from understanding of learner as a homogeneous processor of linguistic input to an understanding of learner as a whole person. So what does it mean to be a whole person? This is really important. So learning is a social activity. We are not just learning with our minds, we are learning with our communities. We are learning from our interactions. We are learning from our peers. We are learning from someone who is knowledgeable, who is more knowledgeable from us. For that reason, language learning is actually a social activity, and it includes us as human beings with our mind, with our cognition, and us with our heart, with our feelings, with our emotions. So Swain beautifully described this process as a struggle, but not just as a struggle, cognitive struggle, but according to Swain, language learning is both a cognitive and emotional struggle at the same time. As prospective teachers and also as teachers, present-day teachers, we should be very well aware of the fact that language learning is not just cognitive, it is emotional. So something is happening in our learners' feelings, and that thing which is happening at that very particular moment is affecting their learning a lot. So soon after we discovered that language learning is at the same time emotional, the researchers, the academicians, directed their attention to the learner as a whole person idea. So the research in second language acquisition shifted toward learners as individuals, learners with intentions, learners with agency, learners with histories, learners with previous experiences. So we know that, oops, something happened to my presentation. Sorry. Fix it. Okay, I think I'm doing it. Just, okay, a second. All right. So if you just check literature by Pavlenko, by Imai, by Lopez, by Arago, there are many other researchers, but these are the newest ones. You will see that there is a very well-established literature showing that emotions are really, really important in teaching English, in learning English. Yet the problem is, in literature, emotions are seen as independent variables, and it is taught that language learning is dependent upon emotions. However, there is a reverse relation between emotions and language learning. That is, language learning process causes some emotions to emerge in learners, and those emotions which emerged during the process of language learning either negatively or positively affect the learners. So in this talk, I will be talking about this reverse relationship. Okay, to understand this relationship, let's have a look at the concept, the term self-concept. What is self-concept? So it is a very generic term used to refer to people's thoughts, ideas, evaluations, and perceptions of themselves. So as you understand from this explanation, this, I can say definition, self-concept is not a fact, it is not factual. Self-concept is very subjective. It is very much related with how, in the light of the others' thoughts, others' evaluations about us. Okay, so we should know that self-concept is not factual, it is perceptual. And self-concept is also dynamic in nature. That is, it is not fixed. It is in flux. It changes all the time. It changes through our interactions. It changes from one social context to the other. It is all dependent upon the atmosphere, the feeling, the ambience that we feel in that social context. And more importantly, we should know that self-concept is domain specific. That is, we have a view of ourselves in learning language. We have another view of ourselves in learning cooking. It's like how I view myself as a mom, how I view myself as a teacher, how I view myself as a friend, how I view myself as a neighbor. So it is the same in self-concept. It changes from domain to domain. I may consider myself as a good language learner. On the other hand, I may think that even in language learning, I may view myself not as a competent speaker. So it is very specific. And in relation to that, we can talk about linguistic self-concept. Linguistic self-concept relates to the individual sense of who they are as language learners and users. It is very much related with their perception of themselves, their ability to use the language to negotiate with people who they are. So this understanding of linguistic self-concept, or we can say L2 self-concept, is very complex. It includes both cognition and affect at the same time. Why? Because we are human beings. We are unavoidably affected by our previous experiences. We are social beings. We are affected from the evaluations of our friends, our teachers, our peers, whatever. We have our own views, beliefs. So that's why this idea of L2 self-concept is very much complex. That's why we have to look very closely to the relation between emotions and this term linguistic self-concept. Because emotions, emotional experiences, and the linguistic self-concept work in harmony. That is, if we have some positive emotional experiences, we feel positive in our own understanding of ourselves. And this is reflected to language learning experiences in a very positive way. Am I too fast? I don't know. I'm just, because of the time limit, I'm talking too fast, I know. But if you can follow me, it's okay. All right, thank you. So these emotional experiences emerged over the course of the study, may either enhance or may act as a barrier to language learning. In order to understand, in order to have a closer look to those emotional experiences and the role of emotions in shaping the learner's perception of themselves, in shaping the learner's linguistic self-concept, I conducted a study with a colleague from Oxford University, and it was a longitudinal case study which lasted for 2 semesters. And in this talk, I would like to refer to the findings of one participant as an example of this relation, to illustrate this relation between emotion and linguistic self-concept. Overall, in this study, we aim to address how learners appraise their emotional experiences in their foreign language learning trajectories, in their histories. And unavoidably, it was certainly, I can say it was a qualitative study. So we made use of the personal narratives of the learners. We also used semi-structured autobiographical interview. And from time to time, we also used WhatsApp and Skype communication with the students, and we also included those in our data source. And then we collected data, we content analyzed the data, and we pay particular attention to the questions, to our research questions, which you can see in my slide. So we had 4 research questions. What experiences do the participants encounter within their language study? How do the participants describe these experiences, these emotional experiences? And how do these emerging emotions affect their relationship and orientation to the target language? And how do the participants view themselves as a target language user over time in different contexts? As I told you, it was a longitudinal study. So we observed the students for 2 semesters, and we would like to know more about how those emotions change through time. Okay, I will jump into the findings to save time. So here are some codes to share with you, and these codes are all the codes that I particularly chose to show you how learners interpret their current self, their imagined self as language learners while they are learning English. I don't know if I need to talk more about what is meant by current self and imagined self. Shall I talk about those very briefly? I don't know, but maybe you are very familiar with Dernay, Zoltan Dernay, and his works. As language learners, we have selves reflecting right now, present time, which is current self. And we also have our imagined self, that is my future self, how I view myself as a language learner in 2 weeks' time, in 2 months' time, in 2 years' time. So, which is my imagined self, how I would like to be in this language in some time. So let's have a look at these codes. These are very important in terms of showing insights how this particular participant, and by the way, he's a male participant, feel, and how those emotional feelings shaped his learning. So this is from the beginning of the semester, the beginning of the first semester. The participants said, sometimes I am wondering, what am I doing here? Especially as progress in using the language isn't always concrete, visible. You know, these are very hard times, the beginning of language learning process. So you think that you know, but all of a sudden you discover that you know nothing. To yourself, you say, you give your message, but when it comes to speaking in front of people in the classroom, all of a sudden you forget everything, so you feel lost. And this is the same here. And the participant says, I'm wondering what I'm doing here. So this is not my work. And he said, I was boring myself, and I had no interest in this study. So this is not a mistake. He didn't say I was bored. He said, I was boring myself. So he was really bored with himself. So he wasn't happy with his learning experience in the beginning of the term. And we know that interactions which require spontaneous language use are very difficult. And in those interactions, students very often feel inadequate. And this, unfortunately, as you see in this case, resulted in boredom. But the thing is that, the awful thing is that this participant attributed his failure to an internal factor, which is his inability. Are you familiar with Weiner's attribution theory or not? I don't know, but Weiner says in his theory, in attribution theory, we attribute our failure or success either to internal or external factors. And when it comes to internal factors, it is either inability, it is either lack of effort, it is either lack of, luck, or maybe it is task difficulty, which cause me to fail, or which cause me to succeed. And in this case, which is very unhealthy, as you see here, the participant attributed this failure. Actually, it is not a failure, actually. It is something understandable, but he told it is a failure, and he attributed this failure to his inadequacy, inability in learning. Can you imagine what happens if you believe that you don't have the ability, you don't have the talent to do something? What you do? You just quit. you stop studying. So that's why I say this is very unhealthy. Then after some time, we see another quote from the same participant. He said, I am very weak in speaking. So frustration on not being able to communicate at all efficiently was frustrating. Moreover, I was frustrated at myself and at the process of language learning. And have a look. The participant said, I feel like a child. Can I ask you, when do you feel like a child? We feel like a child when we think that we are hopeless, we are helpless, we don't know, we need someone, we need an authority, we need someone to ask. So it was the same. This participant said, I feel like a child, so unpity. So he felt himself unable to express himself in this target language, and he portrayed himself as an infant because of his inability to use the language. So one more time, we observe here how our emotions and how our emotional reactions during the study affect our understanding, our perception of ourselves, our view of ourselves as a language user and as a language learner. And again, in the earlier, towards the mid of the semester, there is a quote from this participant. This time we see that he positions himself as a foreign. I feel foreign insofar as I don't feel good enough to keep up with conversation in the classroom. You see how important interaction is? Just because he is not able to keep up with the conversation in the classroom, he says, I feel foreign insofar. He feels like an outsider. He doesn't feel the ownership to learn the language, which is very important. So because of this, his lack of L2 knowledge, L2 proficiency, he says, I'm a foreigner. And this affects not only his linguistic self-concept, but also his perception as a confident and communicative person. It's not in this quote, but in another quote, he said that actually, when it comes to using the mother tongue, he's a very talkative person, he's very communicative, but he said when it comes to speaking in this foreign language, he loses his confidence and he avoids talking, and he says he keeps his silence, he prefers being silent just because of his positioning himself in this process. Then luckily, in the later periods, towards the end of the first semester and in the beginning of the second semester, we see another quote from this student. He wrote that, unlike the beginning of my study, I am now better in grammar. And it made me more excited and enthusiastic to learn and practice. I am getting more emotionally attached to learning the language. This is a very key term. He is getting more emotionally attached to learning the language. So I would like to take your attention to the fact that just because he is seeing himself better in grammar, he is now more excited. Because learners need something visible. They would like to move in their comfort zone. And as grammar is very concrete, he can perform in this comfort zone, and this makes him excited and enthusiastic to learn and practice. Yes, just knowing grammar is not enough, we know that, but at least it is a starting point for the student. So, as you see again, one more changed or shaped, you can say, the participants' beliefs and attitudes toward the target language. Luckily, this participant decided to continue with his study rather than, quitting the work. And in this quote, he said, I could communicate using my new language. I would like to underline the word my new language. Now the learner is saying that it is my. He is not foreign anymore. He says it is my language. And this aided my courage to speak more frequently. And I joined the conversation club. Look, on his own will, he decided to join in a club, in a conversation club. And the first semester, remember, he was so timid in speaking. And this semester, he joined the conversation club. This is actually what is called as investment by Bonnie Norton. If you are familiar with Bonnie Norton is talking about language investment. And this is a very good example of language investment here. Language investment is very different from motivation. You may have the motivation to learn a language, but motivation is useless if you do not put that motivation into action. And what makes you act is your investment. It's like, you know, deciding to do sports. Every day you wake up and you say, all right, I'm going to do sport today, but something happens and you just don't do sport and you just postpone your start, okay? But as you see here, this participant did something and joined the club in order to talk more in this language, which he calls as my language. So this is a turning point. Okay, I'll be fast. So this, have a look at this last quote. I took a more advanced course, which was very challenging. So he decided to continue with the language program. Whenever I learned a fresh new piece of knowledge, it became an exhilarating experience, so a joyful experience. So he decided to sign up for an advanced course, and this reshaped his view of himself. And he said, I will be using this language in my career in the future. He decided to do something using English, which is very good. So what do all these mean for us? It means emotions are very important. They are predictive in success in language learning. And our data, as I told you, also present evidence showing that emotions are very predictive. And emotions are also important because they are a way of defining ourselves, because defining ourselves is not just showing people how intelligent we are. At the same time, we define ourselves using our emotions. And I would like to take your attention to the concept of linguistic status by Aveni in my very limited time. Aveni says, linguistic status, that is a status learners feel based upon their proficiency in L2, is very important because this linguistic status is very important in deciding if I am going to continue with my language work, if I'm going to use it in my communications, or if I'm going to use my filters, emotional filters, and if I'm going to keep myself in my comfort zone, in my safe area. So this is very important. So my final words. What does this mean for us as teachers, as future teachers? We should be aware that there are some extra linguistic variables, including emotions in language learning. So we should direct our attention as teachers to the whole process of language learning, including the whole person. So yes, our role is to teach them English, but if we want to support our learners, we should consider those socio-psychological factors at the same time, and we should wear our emotional lenses to be able to understand learners' experiences. Only then we can make a valuable contribution to their learning. So it is not just the materials, it's not just the course books, okay? So you know the word teacher as a mediator. This is one of our role. We should act like a bridge, okay? in their cognition, between their cognition and affect. And it is not only us as teachers, we should equip students with skills that develop their agency and raise their critical awareness of any emotional barriers that will act as a barrier and that they encounter in their context. So we should make them know that, yes, there are some emotional barriers, but it is all possible to overcome that with the help of their teachers. If you are interested in to read more about emotions, investment, attribution and such kind of things, of course, there is huge literature, but I just listed here the ones that I refer in my talk. And what I say is that keep calm and research on. So, teachers are at the same time researchers. So we know that teachers are researchers. We should conduct action research all the time in our classroom, and emotions are very important topics of action research for us as teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my dear Professor, Dr. JULİDE İNÖZÜ from ÇUKUROVA University, from the Department of English Language Teaching, for this very informative and fruitful speech. It is a very honor and proudful activity to host you here. It's our first meeting, and I know it's online, and I hope one day we can meet in person too. We really would like to kindly invite you to our department to give an in-person speech as well, maybe feature in more healthy times. So we know
Thank you so much.
Fact that you're welcome. We know the very important fact that the teachers are always the researchers as well. That's why we need to take the teachers as the researchers in the classroom setting, in the classroom environment. And we know that emotional factors, or let's say the affective factors, take up a really significant role in the classroom environment. That's why there are lots of emerging self-identities, just like the case of you also mentioned from Zoltan Dörnek's studies, like ideal L2 self or O2 selves and such selves. And we really know the important factors related to emerging self-identities as well. And I want to give the closing up remarks for my dear students, Batuhan and Begüm, so that we can take a family photo together. Then maybe if we have enough time, I think we just have 3 minutes left, so that if you have one more question, we can take. If not, we just first try to take the family photo. Then we are going to give our closing remarks, and we will say farewell to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your collaboration.
Thanks.
So could you please stop sharing your desktop so that we can take a photo?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm going to take a family photo. So could you please take your seat and be ready and smile? Okay, I'm taking the first one. Let me take it for the second one. Okay, thank you so much. So, Batuhan, you have the microphone right now.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We have got one question.
Yeah.
It's from Ferhat Karanfil. What is the teacher's role in meditating and regulating the students' emotions in class?
So, thank you for this question, very important question. Usually as teachers, we are very much interested in covering the curriculum, covering the syllabus, covering what we have for that day's lesson. So we ignore how students show reactions to what we are doing in the classroom. Our role as a mediator is first to make ourselves as teachers aware of what is going on in terms of emotional reactions, and then to make our students aware of the fact that, yes, that learning is more than learning those words, learning those structures. It is more. It includes the whole person. I know that as a teacher, and I am here to help you. We should give this idea to the student.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank
We haven't
you.
got much more time, so we can send your questions by mail. Begüm, please.
Sure.
Anti-session.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you one
Thank
more
you.
time for joining us and sharing our excitement today. Our special thanks go to Professor Dr. JULİDE İNÖZÜ, and hope to see you again. Thank you and bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.